Alright, well, I wanted to get another Q&A session in before the end of 2019, so I'm just about scraping in before the end of the year. Sorry about the boring background for this one. I did want to do it in front of my bookcase, where I could show you all the interesting books that I've got into over the years, but the family had other ideas. I have lined up a few books that have been on my bedside for quite some time though. If this pile ever fell on me in the middle of the night, it would kill me outright. It takes me a while to get round to reading these, but books that I've been given recently, or that I've bought recently that I need to get around to, include some of these. Mr. Christmas. Oh no, that's not mine. The wife bought me this one, Andrew Ridgeley's book for Christmas. I wonder how much he has to say about Fadi Fawaz and the true role that he played in George Michael's life, and why he allegedly slept in his car the night before George was discovered dead in his bed on Christmas Day. Probably not, eh? And it won't mention George Michael's sister Melanie, who was one of the beneficiaries of his will, who died on Christmas Day this year, 3 years to the day after George did, in unexplained circumstances. But don't worry, because the police have said they're not treating it as suspicious, as they generally do. So nothing to worry about there, eh? Happens all the time. We have Esoteric Hollywood by Jay Dyer. I still need to get around to reading that one. Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA and the Secret History of the 60s by Tom O'Neill. That's a bit of a monster. That will take a while. This one is great. Douglas Folk. It's called The Voyage. This is a work of fiction. I met Douglas in Amsterdam earlier this year. This is a really thrilling, gripping read. It's all about flat Earth. Those dreaded words. I'm sure I've just lost half my subscriber base, and many people have turned off this video in disgust. Whatever the case, this is an excellent read. It's very well researched. It combines thrilling fiction with lots of factual, well-researched data. And Douglas is a great storyteller. This book is shot to the top of the Amazon bestseller charts, deservedly so. Well worth getting hold of. You can get copies on Amazon or hit up Douglas direct. I love that read. We have The Autism Epidemic, Transhumanism's Dirty Little Secret by Wayne McCroy. I met Wayne at the Shoot the Moon NYC event in October, and I've recently done a Good Vibrations episode with him talking about his view on how the autism epidemic, because that's what it is closely linked to the transhumanism artificial intelligence agenda that we have going on. It's pretty disturbing stuff, but it makes for an essential read. Big thanks to Maureen Walters up in Newcastle. She put me on to this book. Actually, she bought it for me from a market, Lennon and McCartney. A couple of other books on that subject to get into as well. The Alchemical Tech Revolution, that's another one from Wayne McCroy. Going to get into that one as soon as I can. I have read most of this, Neil Sanders' book on Charles Manson, Now Is the Only Thing That's Real, taken apart the official account of the so-called Manson killings. That's a bit of a monster to read as well. I'll complete that one day. Another one, McCartney, Yesterday and Today. I think that came from Maureen up in Newcastle as well, so more research to be done there. And this one, An Intimate Life of Paul McCartney. Which one, we can ask ourselves. Again, a read that's going to take a minute. Anyway, to get into this video, I've got a bunch of questions that have been sent in by email and via YouTube and Facebook comments from various people. Before we get into it, I just want to address a question which I do get asked a lot. It's a generic general purpose one, and it concerns YouTube videos. A lot of people seem to get very upset and bent out of shape whenever I disable the comments on a YouTube video. So with some of the videos I've got running on my channel, I allow the comments. With other videos, particularly where the subject matter I know is going to be controversial and is going to divide opinion, I tend to disable the comments. I haven't decided which I'm going to do with this video yet. But I did want to address this because people really seem to object to not being able to make a comment on somebody else's video. So a few things I want to address here is, first of all, when you put information out like I do, on the scale that I do, through podcasts, through YouTube videos, through public talks, you will attract a lot of trolls, a lot of haters, a lot of morons, idiots, a lot of people that will accuse you of being a Freemason, of being a Satanist, of being a government agent. A lot of other people that research this type of material and that make videos of this nature will know exactly what I mean by this. But for anyone that has not experienced this, it's not a lot of fun to be on the receiving end of all this stuff when all you're trying to do is put truthful, empowering information into the world for the benefit of others, because you just want to improve the human condition that we're currently experiencing. So you have a lot of bullshit to deal with when you go public with stuff like this, and it gets very tedious. The other thing is, people love to express their opinions on anything. And whenever you allow the comments on a YouTube video, which involves a controversial subject, you will get hundreds of people weighing in to have their say and let their opinion be heard. While I accept there will occasionally be useful nuggets of information that people can share with you, and if you have the patience to go through a long-running thread, you will find the odd piece of information that's genuinely useful, or people will be commending you for what you've put out there. To find those nuggets, you have to wade through a lot of time-wasting BS. It becomes an opinion fest. And I don't know if you've noticed, but opinions, as they say, are like arseholes. Everybody's got one. And don't people love to spout them? So, this is the other aspect of things. People love to come on the platform of somebody else, like myself or any number of other researchers and video makers out there, and weigh in with their two-penneth worth and spout what's on their mind and say what they think about a particular situation. Often these things spiral into arguments, as we all know. There's not a lot of courtesy, there's not a lot of respect shown between people on YouTube threads. People would never speak to each other in this way if they were in a face-to-face confrontational situation. But they seem to be very comfortable with hiding behind a login name from the safety of their keyboard in their darkened bedroom or wherever they go into this stuff, and hurling insults at other people, calling them fuckwits, calling them retards because they don't agree with their particular point of view on something. Now, there is a place where all of that belongs on the internet, and it's on these people's own platforms. So if you want to spout an opinion, if you want to contradict something that somebody else has said, you have a perfect right to do so on your channel, or on your blog site, or in your public talk, on your podcast, your radio show, or through your book. My outlets, my YouTube channel, my books, my public talks, are where my work resides, and sometimes you just want to be able to make a statement and be done with it. You want to comment on a situation, and your involvement in it ceases the minute you've communicated that message. You don't necessarily have time to go through the comments even if you wished to do so or had the will to do so. So I wanted to clear up that point because I don't understand why people find it so necessary to comment on other people's work on YouTube in this way, to be honest. If I came across somebody's work and I had a burning question about it, or I vehemently opposed what somebody had said and wanted to take them up on it or correct them on a point, I would find a way of reaching them direct and communicating with them in that way. And this is what I do see happening. Whenever I disable comments on my YouTube videos, not only do the trolls, the haters and the morons go away, but people who do have something genuinely constructive and meaningful to say find a way of reaching me and making that point. My email address is not a secret, it's always available, and people are able to locate it and reach out to me and communicate directly. So that is the way communication should really get done, not through YouTube threads that go on forever. I really wanted to clear that up and clarify some points on it because it's become a really contentious issue, it seems, among various people out there. So that having been said, we can move on to the main body of what I want to get into here, which is a bunch of questions that have been sent in by people over the months, which I've collated and which I intended to address through this video. Alright, so let me grab my trusty clipboard and we'll see what we have. So, a frequent question I get concerns the authenticity or otherwise of Roger Waters, or George Roger Waters, to give him his real name, because he adopted Roger as his first name from what was originally his middle name. We're talking, of course, about the prominent founding member of Pink Floyd. And I did address this in the last video, aspects of Roger Waters' family background, his ancestry, going into the realms of aristocracy and going into his interesting first marriage to Lady Caroline Christie, the granddaughter of the Marquis of Zetland back in the mid-70s. So we discussed this last time, but the issue of Roger Waters just doesn't seem to go away, and people really want to know whether this guy is to be trusted and whether he's the real deal, particularly when it comes to how outspoken he is on the Zionist regime of Israel and their treatment of the Palestinians. Of course, I can only speculate on this. I don't know Roger personally. I don't have any inside insights into the Pink Floyd closed circle. But I think I mentioned last time that I'm in contact with a guy who is researching what is likely to be a very comprehensive book on Pink Floyd, hidden aspects of the group that you don't normally hear talked about in official biographies. So we're going into the family backgrounds of the members and some of the nefarious connections and affiliations that the group have always had. So one aspect of that concerns Roger's bloodline, and somebody who emailed but wanted to be anonymous, there'll be a few of those in this video, brought up the information that Roger Waters, Mick Fleetwood of Fleetwood Mac, and the well-known British actor Jeremy Irons are all apparently connected to the Norfolk Brereton line. This is the Brereton family bloodline. And this person also notes that the name Jenner crops up when you do the ancestry background research into the Brereton family line. Going all the way back to the early 1800s, we find the town of Blakeney in Gloucestershire featuring there also, which is the same county as the famous Edward Jenner of smallpox vaccine fame came out of. So we've got a possible connection here. This needs a bit more research, it needs a bit more delving into, I would suggest. But this individual is making the suggestion that Edward Jenner may well come from this same long-running bloodline known as Brereton, and connected into that, one way or another, you have Roger Waters, Mick Fleetwood and Jeremy Irons. It would certainly not surprise me if that turned out to be a thing, given what I've come to comprehend about lifetime actors and how people from important family bloodlines and certain backgrounds are groomed for influential roles in public society. So some of them end up being actors, some of them end up being scientists or big business leaders or politicians or statesmen, some of them end up being actors, and some of them end up being musicians. So it seems these roles are decided very early on in the lives of these people, and they're then ushered into them and sent off to get their training in their particular field so that they can be convincing and influential and become popular when they go into whatever field has been set up for them. So this person who is researching the book on Pink Floyd, not going to mention his name because he may not appreciate it at this point, but he also says he's looked into Roger's paternal side where there are plenty of working class northern stock, but genealogies usually go blank on Roger's maternal side. And the maternal is obviously the stealth side of genealogy, where much of the bloodline stock building and intermarriages occur. So I just throw that into the mix when it comes to the interesting question of how authentic Roger Waters may be. There's much more to come on it, and I certainly look forward to what promises to be a very comprehensive book project on this whole subject when my contact here gets the job done. Alright, let's move on to a question that was left on YouTube for me from Gigi Beaufort. And he says, I'm flummoxed by how stupid we are thought of by these so-called elite people. I would go along with that. I think those that control society do view the vast majority of us with absolute contempt. They see us as base, profane idiots. And as they see it, we deserve to wallow in our own ignorance, because we have the opportunity to comprehend how organised society is structured, to realise who these people are that are served up to us as so-called heroes and role models and leaders, And if we don't spot the signs and put the puzzle pieces together, then it's on our own heads, and we deserve everything that we get as a result, because we've chosen that path of profanity. Their view, not mine. So this guy goes on to say, my question is broken into several parts. I'm very familiar with Aleister Crowley and his possible relation to today's Paul McCartney, along with many other pop stars who are influenced by him. These celebrities get pulled into this. Do they know ahead of time some of the darker sides and how dangerous it is? He says, I personally had enough of Crowley from the memoirs book by Thomas Hugh Harriot, and honestly couldn't watch the show because of the evil and horrendous darkness he represented and practiced. What he's talking about is a show that aired in the UK called Good Omens, featuring Michael Sheen as an angel and David Tennant playing the role of a demon. Well, my view on whether celebrities know what it is they're getting into and being a part of is that they come into it in different ways. As I've already discussed, you have the family bloodline links where people are effectively born into it, they're groomed for these roles, and they're pushed into these different directions. You then have those that come out of the military. Many offspring of high-ranking military personnel, as we well know, end up in these influential roles in popular culture as actors, musicians, and all the rest of it. And my view there is that military personnel are treated and considered to be owned commodities of the so-called elites. They're in a different class to the general population in society. And so the sons and daughters of military people who are considered to be owned are also considered to be commodities that can be utilised in whatever way the controllers see fit. And that's why you find the children of generals and admirals and army officers and all the rest of it being put into roles in music and acting and other aspects of popular culture, because they just feel they can do with them whatever they wish, and these people have very little choice. Again, they're born into it and they're ushered into these roles. Then you have a third class, which is what I refer to as the chosen ones, and these are people from regular walks of life who start out in a grassroots organic way, and they show some promise and some skill and some talent in terms of being able to be influential role models. This gets noticed by observers, spotters in these industries, and these people get taken to one side, made an offer, which they usually can't refuse. What these people are looking for in many cases is narcissistic and sociopathic traits. People who will do anything for fame and fortune and success, who are very low on morals and ethics, and basically want to be influential at any cost. These are people that turn out to be very useful for those that control culture. And so they're brought into the fold, they're stepped up a few levels, they're initiated, and there comes a point where you step over a line and you won't be stepping back over that line again. Now you are owned, you are controlled, and you're doing what you're told for the rest of your days. And occultism and all this flirting with the teachings of Aleister Crowley and the doctrines of the Golden Dawn and the OTO and the Freemasons and all these other secret societies that we see so many times coming up in these walks of life is a big part of things. Unfortunately, it would seem, where you get an obsession with dark, occult, ritualistic activity, pedophilia is often never far from the surface. And you then get aspects of trauma-based mind control, and that ties right back in again to the world of the military and military intelligence. These different aspects really are interchangeable, and we see representations of them all over the place. So to answer Gigi Beauchamp's question, I feel that in a lot of cases these people do not fully understand what it is they're now a part of. They are instructed by their handlers to perform certain activities, certainly to flash up different signs and symbols at any opportunity, and this will all be at the behest of those that control these different industries. and many of these people will just be their puppets and their stooges doing what they're told. There will of course be some high-ranking ones, particularly those that come from these bloodline families and maybe some of these military families that will understand what the agenda is, and they're willingly playing their role in it. But many of them will be left largely clueless as to what it is they're a part of. That's just the way I feel about it. Again, as with so many things, I can only speculate. A question came from Alan Rosado Anastasio in Portugal, and he says, my question is about Elliott Smith, one of my inspirations along with Nick Drake, Bert Jansch and other acoustic guitarists with alternative tunings. At the moment I'm playing a Nick Drake tribute in Portugal for the 50th anniversary of 5 Leaves Left, the first Nick Drake album. Elliott Smith died in strange circumstances, and he said the music industry would kill him eventually. He was such a sensitive soul and sang about emotions and relationships, and I wonder what really happened. Well, you and me both, mate. All I really have on Elliott Smith is what I've been able to glean from the official biographies about him. Didn't know much about the guy before this question was brought across my radar. There are only so many artists I've had time to research, and those that fall outside of the genres that I know well, I tend to not know a lot about. So I've looked him up, and we've established that Stephen Paul Elliott Smith, born in 1969, died on the 21st of October 2003, was an American singer, songwriter and multi-instrumentalist. He was born in Omaha, Nebraska, raised primarily in Texas, and lived much of his life in Portland, Oregon, where he first gained popularity. Now, the aspect of Elliott Smith that interests most people is the bizarre circumstances in which he left this world. In 2003, at the age of 34, he died of 2 stab wounds to the chest. And according to the official accounts, at the time of the stabbing, he was at his Lemoyne Street home in Echo Park, California, where he lived with his girlfriend Jennifer Chiba. According to Chiba, the two were arguing, and she locked herself in the bathroom to take a shower. Chiba then heard him scream, and upon opening the door, she saw Elliott Smith standing with a knife in his chest. She pulled the knife out, after which he collapsed and she called 911. Smith died in the hospital with the time of death listed as 1:36 p.m. The coroner reported that no traces of illegal substances or alcohol were found in Smith's system at the time of his death, but did find prescribed levels of antidepressants, here we go again, how familiar is this one in the premature demise of music artists, anxiolytic and ADHD medications, including clonazepam, mirtazapine, don't you just love these big pharma multi-syllabled names, atomoxetine, natural herbal plant medicine cures are so much easier to pronounce, and amphetamine. There were no hesitation wounds, which are typical of suicide by self-infliction, and due to the inconclusive autopsy ruling, the Los Angeles Police Department's investigation remains open, the last we heard of it. So that's really all I've got on it. I don't know any more than what we've been told in terms of the official account. It does seem very strange that he would apparently commit suicide in this manner. There are surely more painless and convenient ways of doing it if you decide you want out of this world. I'm sure there are many other unexplained aspects to what happened to Elliott Smith. If anyone watching this knows any more about it, please do get in touch. Drop me an email. I can't be sure the comments will be open on this video. You can mail me at markdevlinuk@gmail.com. I'll put the email address in the notes at the bottom of the video. Anyone that's got any more to offer on what happened to Elliott Smith, please do share it. I am reminded also of the group Badfinger, and a couple of people have asked about the 2 members of this group coming out of Wales who died prematurely. We're told they both committed suicide. We're talking Pete Ham and Tom Evans of Badfinger. So this was a Welsh English rock band formed in Swansea. They were active from the 1960s through to the 80s. The best known lineup consisted of Pete Ham, Mike Gibbons, Tom Evans and Joey Molland. The working title for the Beatles' 1967 song, With a Little Help from My Friends, was Badfinger Boogie, and that is said to have been the inspiration for this group Badfinger to have taken their name. They're best known for their song Without You, which was covered famously by Nilsson in the 70s, Harry Nilsson. It was later covered by Mariah Carey on one of her albums in the 90s. So we have the strange situation of Pete Ham, and he is said to have hanged himself in his garage studio in Woking, Surrey on the 24th of April 1975. His suicide note, apparently addressed to his girlfriend Anne Heriot and her son Blair, read, "Anne, I love you. Blair, I love you. I will not be allowed to love and trust everybody. This is better. P.S. Stan Polly is a soulless bastard. I will take him with me." This concerns a dispute that Pete Ham had allegedly got into with Stan Polly, part of the group's management, over, I guess, financial issues and publishing concerns regarding the group. So Pete Ham died at the age of 27, another member of the 27 Club, reportedly at his own hand. Then we have the other prominent member of the group, Tom Evans, who died on the 18th of November 1983, and what we're told about him is that he had an extensive and heated argument on the telephone regarding past Badfinger income still in escrow from the Apple era and the Without You songwriting royalties that Evans was now receiving, which a former manager of the group wanted a share of. Following this argument, we're told that Tom Evans hanged himself in the garden of his home in New Haw, Surrey on the morning of the 19th of November 1983. So many questions remain about how accurate those reports of these two group members taking their own lives may be. Again, if anyone has more information on Badfinger, please feel free to share that. As I record this, I've just finished watching the BBC Two documentary titled Mystify, all about Michael Hutchence of the group In Excess, who is yet another musician that we're told died at his own hand. He apparently committed suicide on the 22nd of November, the anniversary of the Kennedy assassination, in 1997, and he was discovered dead in a room of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Sydney, Australia. So this documentary that just aired was very much reinforcing the official version of events that you'll get on Wikipedia and elsewhere. And that is that Michael fell into a deep depression. He underwent an accident in 1997 where he was knocked to the ground, hit his head, and suffered some brain damage, where he lost his sense of smell and his sense of taste. And this is said to have weighed very badly on him. He sunk into a deep depression as a result of it. He'd also just come out of this acrimonious situation involving Paula Yates, who was his latest mistress, girlfriend, and Bob Geldof, who Paula Yates had previously been the partner of. Michael Hutchence and Paula Yates had a daughter together named Tiger Lily, and Bob Geldof had applied for custody of the children that he had had already with Paula Yates, Peaches and Fifi Trixabel, and also Tiger Lily, which was, this child was nothing to do with Bob Geldof. Biologically, she was the child of Michael Hutchence and Paula Yates, but when a quantity of opium was reportedly found in Paula Yates's home, then Bob Geldof applied for a court order to gain custody of their kids, and this long and very arduous legal battle ensued involving Michael Hutchence, Paula Yates and Bob Geldof. We're told that Michael Hutchence decided to do away with himself as a result of this affair, which was happening at the time. What the documentary didn't mention is the many anomalies and discrepancies surrounding the circumstances of Michael Hutchence's death, such as people in adjoining rooms in the hotel talking about having heard a commotion in the room at the time he's said to have hung himself. They heard other voices, and they heard lots of bangs and, the sounds of a scuffle going on in the room. What the documentary also didn't mention is that Paula Yates at the time had accused Bob Geldof of having something to do with Michael Hutchence's death. She said words to the effect of, "Bob Geldof murdered Michael." Pretty direct about it. "It makes me sick. Everyone thinks that he's a saint. Everyone thinks he's this great guy, but in actual fact, he's a devil." You also had a comment from Michael Hutchence's mother saying that Bob Geldof was Satan and a very cruel person. And, his family felt that Bob Geldof had played some role in what had happened to Hutchence. Another comment that Paula Yates made was that Geldof had once said to her, "Don't forget, I am above the law." Now, who gets to say that with that kind of certainty? So there's obviously a lot more to know about Sir Bob Geldof, for he is a Sir, and his involvement in this whole affair, but he came out of this BBC Two documentary, whiter than white, very much portrayed as the victim of all of this, and suffering great emotional turmoil as a result of this battle with the kids. So what also happened a few years later, beyond Michael Hutchence's death in 1997, is that Paula Yates herself was found dead in 2000, the result of some kind of undisclosed overdose, which so many celebrity deaths are put down to. And then some years after that, the daughter of Bob Geldof and Paula Yates, Peaches Geldof, was also discovered dead, having apparently taken some kind of overdose. And Peaches was a member of the OTO, one of these secret society mystery school groups that Aleister Crowley once helmed. She also had become involved in the situation involving the Lost Prophets singer Ian Watkins, who had been exposed as a grotesque paedophile and child rapist who had harboured desires to rape babies and had publicly stated that this is something he planned to do. Peaches apparently was due to reveal the names of some of the mothers who had allowed their children to be sexually abused by Ian Watkins. And right at the time that she was due to do this, she just happens to turn up dead. So this is a very tangled web. From Michael Hutchence we go into the Bob Geldof family situation involving Paula Yates, involving Peaches, and it's one of these that just goes very deep indeed. I did address it in Musical Truth Volume 1, other researchers have got on the case as well. It's one you can have a field day with when you want to look at the uglier, more distressing side of the entertainment industry. So we should probably leave that whole thread right there and move on to a question that I got from Alice Renee Fennell. And she emailed me from New York saying, "My question concerns a topic you've covered in your lecture No More Heroes about artists who receive awards of honour for services to Britain." She says, "I'm a bit dismayed to see that David Gilmour, CBE, Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits, who's an OBE, and Damon Albarn of Blur and Gorillaz, OBE, people I've greatly admired through the years, have accepted these awards, not to mention the filmmaker Christopher Nolan, who's now a CBE. My question is, can one be so honoured by the system and not be a puppet? It saddens me, but I'd rather know the truth." Well, me too. My view on this is that these people either come from appropriate backgrounds in the first place. As we discussed earlier, they come from these important families, they're steeped in Freemasonry or other secret society groundings, or they are people who, again, started out organically in a natural kind of way, but were simply bought off, and they had their egos stoked by being awarded MBEs or OBEs, because it does tend to cause many people to puff out their chest with pride at having been apparently noticed for their skill and talent and their contribution to their field, it seems. And I feel this is probably the case with many DJs that have been getting awards in recent years. This never used to happen, but it has been happening. You had John Peel, who was a long-time BBC establishment asset. He was a public school boy, came from a aristocratic kind of upbringing, before he reinvented himself as a bit of a man of the people and a hero of working class music scenes and all of this. So he got his award many years ago. He's been dead many years now, of course. He died in 2004. Lots more to know about John Peel, whose real name was John Ravencroft. Again, I went into him in Musical Truth Volume 1 as well. It seems his public image was very much at odds with his background, and he seems to be another character that was inserted into a scene in order to a very large extent, be its gatekeeper and its overseer. So we had that with John Peel and all these forms of indie music and alternative music and punk later on, which he championed. Then we had Annie Nightingale, who is also a long-time BBC asset. I believe she's still on Radio 1 after something like 50 years. She must be approaching 80 now. But she got awarded an MBE or an OBE a few years ago. So she followed in the footsteps of John Peel. She's been pushing alternative music forms on Radio 1 for many years. But another of her roles has been very much pushing drug culture and ecstasy culture. Her catchphrase on her Radio 1 alternative show for a long time was Annie on One. Get it? Like Annie on Radio 1, but also Annie on One, as in on an E, doing a pill. So she seems to have very much pushed ecstasy culture as an offshoot of dance music over the years. Very instrumental in that. Other DJs that have received MBEs or OBEs in recent years include David Rodigan, the reggae DJ, and some would maintain gatekeeper for the reggae scene. He's another former public schoolboy, comes from a military family background. He was trained as an actor, a stage actor, before he was inserted into the reggae scene. My guest on one of my podcasts from earlier this year, Rodney Shabazz, had some opinions about David Rodigan and his controlling role in the reggae scene. People might want to go back and have a listen to that. Good Vibrations from earlier this year. I'll put the link in the show notes below. We also have Pete Tong, ambassador, as he's usually described, of the dance music scene, who picked up an MBE a few years ago. Unexpected for many. Someone else who was very unexpected was Jazzy B of Soul to Soul. You have Norman J, long-time DJ out of London, mainstay of the Notting Hill Carnival, one-time Kiss FM DJ, who was awarded an MBE. Trevor Nelson, BBC presenter for many years, has also picked one up, as has Goldie, the drum and bass pioneer, DJ and producer. That's a pretty unexpected one, given that Goldie has always projected himself as having this sort of anti-establishment stance, stick it to the man and all this. And there he is, gleefully accepting an MBE from Prince Charles. So what is going on with these awards? In my view, these are accolades given for services rendered. These are people that have put in useful service within their particular fields in terms of ensuring they go a certain way and ensuring certain pre-desired agendas are being adhered to. So my view is that anyone that does accept one of these awards is doing the bidding of those who are controlling these industries and ultimately directing where society is going and where attitudes and perceptions are going within the general mindset of the public. And most of them, I would say, are doing so in knowledge of what it is they're a part of, but many of them are just doing it because they like their egos to be stoked and they like to feel that they've achieved a certain amount of personal success as they see it in their field, and these awards are given in recognition of that. That's how I feel about it, but personally I would never choose to trust or follow anyone that has accepted one of these awards again, given that they are emblems of the British Empire, which has a very murderous and not particularly ethical background when you go into its history. Next message came from Christopher Morland by email, and he says, do you have much information on Depeche Mode? He was always a big fan of Depeche Mode, and he's actually offered me a few contributions here which we can run through. There was some stuff regarding Depeche Mode which was posted online by a blogger going by the name of Awoken2, which we'll go into. I'll just mention first off that back when I was doing a lot of artist interviews for Blues and Soul magazine, which I used to work on in the 90s, going into the early 2000s, I got to meet many artists. And when I would ask them who their musical influences were, the vast majority of those coming from the electronic dance music realm or dealing in any way with dance music culture would always hold up Depeche Mode as a group that had been hugely influential on them, that they looked up to in a big way. It was either Depeche Mode or Stevie Wonder. So when I was speaking to black music artists like soul artists and people coming from that more soulful music side of things, Stevie Wonder would always get mentioned as someone that put them on the path to making the music that they do. But with the more electronic side of things, always Depeche Mode. They seem to have had more of an influence on people than we might credit, in the same way that Kraftwerk did. You would always hear Kraftwerk and Tangerine Dream spoken of in great reverential tones as well. Anyway, according to this guy Awoken2, in what he wrote on his blog, he goes into Martin Gore, one of the key members of Depeche Mode, and he states that Martin Lee Gore was born in Dagenham, Essex, in England. Gore's biological father turned out to be a black American GI who was stationed in Britain. Gore was raised by his stepfather and biological mother. Gore responds to the source's information and is quoted in Miller's book. I'm not sure who Miller is here, there's a little bit missing, but this would be an official biography of Depeche Mode, I guess. So Martin Gore is quoted in this particular book as saying, it brings up family traumas. This is the question of his fatherhood, who his dad turned out to be, this American black GI. And he says, it brings up family traumas, and it's one of those things I'd rather not talk about. So this blogger goes on to address the title of Depeche Mode's very first album in 1981, which was called Speak and Spell. And of course the word spell has a double meaning in the word magic that makes up the English language. He says, it was a very apt description of this band's alchemy over a near 40-year period. All of the major artists you will find, their very first spell is to release some nice innocuous music with lyrics that appeal to the largest possible demographic. And then they do the bait and switch. So we've seen this many times when new artists are presented to us. They come out very appealing. They often make songs that are very innocent sounding in their lyrical stance. And it wins over a fan base for the group. If the music sounds good, if it's catchy, if it's got a hook to it, then it brings people in, and they then tend to follow this group in whatever direction they choose to take them. We often find that a short way down the line, they do a switch on them. And far from being innocent anymore, they start introducing some very dark themes into their music, occult elements, aspects of degradation of morals, and all this stuff that fits in with the general decline in moral standards in culture generally. So going on, this person says, now the fan base is established, it's time to strengthen the spell by reaching for a larger demographic. In the next video of this group he's talking about, Depeche Mode, you'll see how the band now communicate to anybody who has suffered pain or loss, and to anybody who is struggling with their faith after losing somebody close to them. And he's talking about the song Break the Silence. The video to this is interesting because one of the versions of it was filmed at the very top of the World Trade Center towers in New York, and at the point where Dave Garn sings the line, "Come crashing into my little world," you get a close-up of the Twin Towers. And this brings to mind what happened on 9/11 in terms of the planes crashing into the towers. If that's what happened, at least that's the official story. So there seem to be elements of predictive programming for what was possibly known to be coming through this video, which was released in 1990, 11 years before the events of 9/11 in 2001. So moving on in the analysis of this particular song, now with a large emotionally bound following, their predictive programming will begin, says Awoken2. Moving on to the next one, this person says, here they are informing their fans of the dark invisible forces that took over them, the group. This is this person's opinion of what they came to represent. It's also paying homage to Aleister Crowley with Illuminati and Masonic imagery everywhere. And what he's talking about is the song Where's the Revolution, which is a very recent one. This was released in February 2017. This person says, I don't know whether the band were complicit or whether they were just following instruction from a higher order, but the words of this song, the manner in which it was sung, and the portrayal of peasants in the video all made me feel insulted and equally disgusted. So you can look up the video to Where's the Revolution online. Certainly to me it looks rather disturbing in parts. It's in black and white, there's all kinds of occult signalling going on to my thinking, and people can make of it what they will. The lyrics of the song appear to indicate that the group is on the side of the people. Where have we heard this dynamic before? They're talking about where's the revolution, in the context of we all know that we're being controlled and subjugated and enslaved by this elite ruling class that we have, so why are we not rising up and taking action? Why are we just putting up with this crap? Where's our line in the sand? When are we going to say no more? And when are we going to rise up in our mass numbers and resist this? Now, these are admirable sentiments that I certainly go along with, but can we really trust a group of Depeche Mode's ilk, given the fact that they've enjoyed mainstream success for the last 40 years and they're a product of the industry machine in terms of what they're trying to communicate through these lyrics? Is it more likely to be the case that they're trying to incite revolution and incite some kind of uprising so that it can be very quickly crushed and put down when it's known to be coming? I would suggest that this is probably the spirit in which this song is being delivered, rather than one of sincerity and the group genuinely trying to will this kind of revolution in place. It's the same sentiments as we got from the Muse track Uprising, which on the surface of it appeared to be, again, the group on the side of the people. They're just like us and they're trying to make a statement against the powers that be. But we now know a lot more about the true nature of Muse, where they came from, what they represent, and so it is the case with this group, and it will be with any other that get any kind of mass market platform like Depeche Mode have. The only other thing that I want to mention about the group is one of these very strange stories that we get coming out of the Chelsea Hotel in New York City, which I got a chance to visit when I was in New York just a couple of months ago. It's quite an unsettling place. It's got a very checkered history. I did go into it in Musical Truth Volume 2, and I've mentioned it in other videos, in terms of the shocking number of playwrights and artists and authors and musicians and other people from the performing arts who at some time or another have based themselves in the Chelsea Hotel in New York. There have been many suicides there, there have been many unexplained deaths, there have been reports of occult rituals taking place in the basement of the hotel. It's not the sort of place that I would ever particularly want to spend a night, and it seems to have had a magnetic draw on so many music artists over the years that have chosen to shoot videos there and spend time writing songs there. One of them is Dave Gahan of Depeche Mode, who shot the video to his song Saw Something at the Chelsea Hotel. So for more history on this particular place, you could take a listen to the podcast that I recently guested on with Croww777 and Jason Lindgren as part of Croww777 Radio. I did an episode a couple of months back about the punk music scene and various elements of that, and I did go through all the sort of nefarious elements of the Chelsea Hotel in that particular podcast, which people may have heard or may want to go back and take a listen to. Alright, so let's move on to whatever's next. This person asks about the anonymous-style vegan activist groups and the Manchurian candidate-style events such as Hungerford and Dunblane, and asks for my insights into all this. So let's address Hungerford and Dunblane first of all. So these were events which took place many years ago in the UK, and they seem to echo these mass shooting events that we're getting a lot of in the United States recently. The killers involved bear all the hallmarks of having been British MK Ultra style mind control subjects. I mean, all the clues are there. So Hungerford happened on the 19th of August 1987 on a sleepy little market town in Berkshire. This guy Michael Ryan went on the rampage, we're told, killed 16 people, including his own mother, and then he turned the gun on himself. So there goes any insights into what his motives were. And according to a few researchers' insights into what this may all have been about, the suggestion is that it could well have been a psyop designed to create fear of the outdoors and life in small country towns in preparation for what was known to be coming. So trying to coerce people into living into cities and creating the idea that if you live with lots of other people in large towns and cities, or human settlement zones, to use the language of the social engineers coming out of the United Nations that were involved in Agenda 2030 and these different programs, you're far better off and your chances of safety are much better. The story we got with Hungerford was that Michael Ryan first went on the rampage in nearby Savernake Forest, and he shot up a young mother with her family who were out picnicking at the time in the woods. So this creates the idea that you're not actually safe out in the open enjoying nature because some nutter may come along and blast you to kingdom come. Then he went all around Hungerford, this small town, and shot a whole bunch of people there, creating the idea that you're not actually very safe in these small towns because you never know what's going to go off. There was a similar story that we got in the UK in 2010 concerning this taxi driver by the name of Derek Bird. And he went on the rampage, so we're told, in the Lake District, Cumbria, another, very rural part of the UK, wide open spaces. He shot a whole bunch of people before turning the gun on himself, don't they always? So that seemed to be another incident along similar lines to Hungerford. Dunblane happened on the 13th of March 1996. This guy, Thomas Hamilton, went on the rampage, killed 16 people before turning the gun on himself. Exactly the same profile as with Michael Ryan. And this particular event in Scotland there has been linked to establishment paedophilia activity, with the suggestion that some of the children who were the victims of Thomas Hamilton may have been involved in child trafficking and sexual abuse at the hands of the elite, the establishment of Scotland, and that it was to some extent a sort of cover-up exercise in damage limitation. I'm not sure what there is to quantify that and how far it remains within the realms of opinion of certain researchers, but that's the word on it according to many people as well. And on the Hungerford and Dunblane front, I would point people towards the work of an English writer who goes by the name of Lestrade, simply Lestrade, and he appears on Miles Mathis's site. If you go to mileswmathis.com and scroll through the archive of articles there, you'll find a couple from this guy Lestrade addressing Dunblane and Hungerford in great forensic detail, doing what Miles Mathis does in his videos and taking apart the whole thing frame by frame. The opinion of this particular writer is that both these events were set up, and to a very large extent they were PSYOP hoaxes designed to achieve some social engineering impact or other. So people should take a look at that. I'll put the link to that one in the notes below the video as well, and that might give some different sort of insights into what may have been going on there. With regard to the vegan activist groups, certainly there is a social engineering aspect going on to the whole push in trying to coerce people towards adopting vegan lifestyles. And a lot of people seem to have fallen for this. A lot of people seem to be adopting what the planners of this particular scheme surely knew that they would, in terms of going for many of these fake alternative meat products that we're now getting on the shelves of supermarkets. So it's going to be brands like Quorn, like the Linda McCartney brand, the brand known as Wicked, the brand known as Heck. And these are all plant-based products which are designed to replicate certain meat products. So if you're someone that's given up meat and you really miss your bacon or your sausages or your burgers, these products are there to look and reportedly have the texture of these original meat products, but without involving, the cruelty of meat. That's the way it's being sold to us. Nutritionists will tell you that a lot of this product, a lot of these items which are soy-based, so much of it comes down to being based in soya, is not particularly good for human health. It's not giving you all the nutrients that you need. There are reports that eating too much soy product actually has the effect of feminizing men, because it's got products in it which mimic estrogen hormones. Not sure how much truth there is to all of this, but either way, it seems these products are not the best for you if that's all you're going to eat, if you've been coerced into adopting a vegan diet. You do need to do the research, you do need to make sure you're getting all your nutrients and all your proteins from a wide variety of plant-based foods. It can be done. We really don't need meat or dairy to be healthy, functioning humans. It just involves proper research and getting clued up on nutritional facts. But I'm not denying that there has been a social engineering push towards getting people to adopt vegan lifestyles. There are all kinds of questions as to why this is being done. I did a roundtable podcast earlier this year as part of Good Vibrations with Nathan Riddett, Jo Lomax and Sean McCann, where we discussed the many reasons why this may be going on. But I would agree with the sentiment that these anonymous style vegan activist groups are doing the bidding of, once again, the social engineers who want to shape and mould public attitudes and perceptions. And the vegan plant-based lifestyle thing seems to be getting lumped in with all other social justice warrior, progressive, liberal type agendas as well, such as the transgender agenda and the transhumanist push towards artificial intelligence. There seems to be this idea that if you're an SJW, you have to embrace all of these subjects and not just go down the path of one. So if you're a vegan activist, you're expected to stand up for transgender, LGBTQ rights and all the rest of it, and to get involved in transhumanism and all of this. It's clearly all social conditioning. And as far as I'm concerned, the only reason for pursuing a vegan plant-based diet comes down to the moral aspect of whether it's right action in creation to be supporting the domination and the torture and the murder of billions of sentient living beings. This aspect of the argument trumps all others in my view, and the only reason that's important to me in pursuing a plant-based diet is the moral aspect of it. Right action in creation. That's really all I want to say about that. Just genuine vegans become so out of personal compassion and concern towards other living sentient beings. That's it. You don't do it because it's a fad. You don't do it because it's a trend. You don't even do it because it's better for your health. That's a subsidiary bonus aspect of it, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, what's next? Somebody else is asking about, in the same breath as the Hungerford and Dunblane events, the Lockerbie air disaster, which happened on the winter solstice of 1988. So this was 21st of December 1988, when the Pan Am jet came down over Lockerbie in Scotland with massive loss of life. Terrible incident, of course. Is there more to know about it? Well, a couple of aspects which tie back into the music industry involve the surprising number of famous people who have later stated that they were due to be on that doomed flight, but for one reason or another they missed it, and so they narrowly escaped death in the process. One of them is Johnny Rotten, John Lydon of the Sex Pistols, who states that he was due to be on the flight. The only reason he missed it is because his wife was taking so long packing the cases that they were running late for the airport. And in the end he said, you know what, we'll just get another flight, forget it. And so they escaped being on the flight because of that, if you believe it. How convincing does that sound? Then you have Kim Cattrall, the actress from Sex and the City, who states that she was due to be on the flight. The reason she missed it is because she was at Harrods in London trying to find a teapot as a present to her mother to take back to the States. It took her so long to locate the correct teapot that she missed the flight. I'm sure that's very convincing as well. These are like excuses for not doing your homework, like the dog ate your book, right? They're in a similar vein to that. Then the whole of the Four Tops, the entire group, have stated that they were due to be on the flight, but for whatever reason they missed it as well. So this becomes rather strange. What are the chances of all these famous people just happening to be on one particular flight and that flight going down and regular people losing their lives, but these celebrities not being so unlucky? It reminds me of the stories we got on 9/11 of the large number of people who claimed that they were due to be on one of those doomed flights as well. These include, so we're told, Michael Jackson, Seth MacFarlane of Family Guy, and various other people who've said that they narrowly escaped being on one of those doomed flights. Then we get the story from Paul McCartney, who states he was on the tarmac at JFK Airport in New York, stuck there, waiting to take off, and he was caught up in the whole aftermath of the 9/11 thing as well. I mean, what are the chances of these people being in place if it was just some random happenstance thing? I don't know. It's strange business. People can make of it what they will, as with all other things. All right, we'll wrap up soon, but just a couple of other questions I want to get in. D. Critch on email has asked, what are your thoughts on the Northern Soul scene in the UK during the 1970s? Do you think this was an organic music scene, or was it part of a social engineering or culture creation experiment? I always feel it gave rise to the booze binge culture we have today with nightclubs and late night drinking hours. Just my opinion. And then Dietrich goes on to say, I do think a lot of changes did happen during the latter half of the 1960s, particularly with societal values, drugs, alcohol, etc. Censorship in films were relaxed and swear words and graphic violence became frequent. Now you can't even watch a supposed kids' film without hearing bad language. I can't recall any film prior to the 1970s where any profanity is used. I think there were probably a few in the 60s, but I take the point. Well, Northern Soul is a truly fascinating subculture coming out of the northern part of the United Kingdom, primarily Lancashire, Cheshire, parts of Yorkshire, I guess, Greater Manchester, these areas. It was very tribal and quite snobbish and elitist in ways, in terms of the people that gravitated towards that scene. They very much treated it as a closed circle that only a chosen few were welcome into. And it was like a best kept secret. It was almost like a little secret society where these kids from regular working class walks of life would get together at the weekend in these clubs, legendary venues like the Wigan Casino and the Twisted Wheel in Manchester and the Golden Torch in Stoke. And they would dance all night to very up-tempo soul music coming out of primarily Detroit but other areas of the United States. Very rare soul records that were known as stompers because they were very fast and they demanded a very energetic dance style to respond to them appropriately. So these clubs would stay open all night. They would run primarily till 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and the kids that would be dancing to this music would be fueled on amphetamines and other drugs. It's the only way they could keep going with this energetic dance style all night. And so it's very much tied in with drug culture in that way. And it was a scene that was very much limited to the north of England. It didn't get embraced in the south. The south had its own version of things. And it was very white. It was working class, but from what I can make out, there weren't very many black people or Asian people involved in this scene. It was a very white-dominated scene. And while you had the Northern Soul scene going on in the northern parts of England, down south, particularly in the southeast, you had a movement known as the Soul Mafia. And this dealt with black music as well, soul, funk, boogie, fusion, these styles of music, jazz fusion. DJs there involved the likes of Robbie Vincent, Chris Hill, Froggy, a very young Pete Tong, Jeff Young. They were known as the Soul Mafia of the Southeast. But this scene, again, was very white-dominated. You didn't see a lot of black people getting involved in this. And so it seemed to be a southern reflection or counterpart of what was going on with Northern Soul. And up there you had DJs like Richard Serling, Colin Curtis and Soul Sam that were at the helm of that whole thing. So as to whether it was an organic music scene or it was part of some social engineering culture creation experiment, I really couldn't say. This is open to speculation. I wasn't a part of either of those scenes. I'm too young to have been there in their heyday. Again, if anyone can shed any further light on what these scenes may really all have been about, or whether they were indeed genuine and grassroots and they just grew up out of working class neighbourhoods, I'd be very interested to get some further insights into it. My only reflection on Northern Soul is that it was very tribal in nature, very exclusive, you could say, in terms of who was welcomed into that inner circle, and it certainly did introduce the idea of all-night club events and quite prodigious amphetamine use to see these people through the night. I think I'm pretty much going to leave it there for this time round. There are some more questions to address. I'll get on to doing another one of these within 2 or 3 months. Just want to mention that a lot of the points that I have covered are in my books, Musical Truth Volumes 1 and 2. Most people are probably familiar with those already, but if you are new to my work and you want to get into many, many more subjects of this nature in a very deep, to a very deep degree, those books might be of interest to you. I've just brought out my brand new book as well, which is very different to the other two. It's called The Cause and the Cure, and this is a novel. It's my first forays into the world of allegorical fiction. It's very similar to what my man Douglas Folk did with The Voyage right here. Actually, our books were released on the very same day. And this one is set in Oxford, my home city, in 1990. It's very rich in detail from those times. It's got a subplot running through it, which is all connected to the rave and acid house scene that was running in those times. But on the surface of it, it's a crime thriller, but it goes a lot deeper than that. It's layered, it's coded, it's allegorical, it's metaphorical. It concerns the world of secret societies. It concerns natural law and spiritual teachings and doctrines, and I feel that it would be of interest to anyone that is into alternative information and is on the path to truth and human freedom. I think you're going to find a lot from this book. So copies are available now on Amazon, priced at £10 for anyone that wants to take a look at The Cause and the Cure. If you want to get a signed copy from me direct, you can email me again at markdevlinuk@gmail.com. The address is down in the show notes, and I'm able to send out signed copies all over the world. We can just get a dialogue going on email, and we can sort that out. The other thing to mention is that to anyone watching in Australia, I'm going to be touching down there in March of 2020 for a mini speaking tour. I'm doing 3 dates. The first one is in the suburbs of Brisbane on the 19th of March, which is a Thursday. Then on Saturday, 21st of March, spring equinox, I'm going to be in Sydney. And the following day, Sunday the 22nd of March, doing a talk in Perth. The talks are titled Music's Military and Mind Control Connections. And I'm going to be getting into all the kind of stuff that I address in my books, with a particular focus on certain Australian artists as well. So anyone that's in those areas, Brisbane, Sydney or Perth, and you can get along to any of these talks, it'd be great to see you there. Again, I will drop a link in the show notes to where you can get further information on those talks. My apologies to people in Melbourne, Adelaide and other areas of Australia. I'm not able to get there this time around. It's a very quick whistle-stop trip, just involving those 3 cities. But if all goes well, I do hope to come back. And when I do, Adelaide and Melbourne will certainly be on the agenda for that. Another event, just to mention for people in the United States, is the conference known as Seed for Growth, which is happening at Skatopia, or aspects of, I think there are different venues involved actually, but it's being put together by Brandon Martin, who runs the Skatopia venue in Athens, Ohio. The nearest city is Columbus, but this event is taking place in Athens at the end of May 2020. I'm going to be involved in that. I'll be doing a talk and also a conscious music DJ set. Also on the bill for it are Mark Passio, who is headlining. That's going to be his last public conference event for outside organisers, he has announced. So it's the last opportunity to catch Mark Passio speak outside of his own events. Also on the bill are Sean McCann. Nathan Riddett is coming over with me from the UK to speak at that one. And it's all concerned with truth, freedom, human consciousness, the occult, holistic living, aligning yourself with natural law and truth in creation, all that good stuff. That takes place from the 27th to the 29th of May 2020. More information on that, again, in the link below this video. It's called Seed for Growth in Ohio. Hope to see a lot of my American friends at that event if you can make it. That's about it for this video. I'll catch you again for the next one. We've just clocked in at 1 hour 8 minutes. I think that's quite enough for now. See you soon. Happy 2020. And thanks for watching. Thanks for the continued support. Catch you next time.